Good morning, everybody. It's Andre van Zyl here. It's wonderful to be with you all this morning. I'm speaking to you from my office here on APK on the Kingsway campus of UJ. And it's wonderful for me as well to be able to add my voice to all the other voices to welcome you to the 6th annual FYE conference hosted by the South African National Resource Centre. Thank you for joining us for these 3 days. We met in this way 2 years ago in Durban, and we planned to meet last year in Cape Town. Everything was arranged, everything was getting ready, and you were all enrolling for the conference and sending abstracts. And then we didn't meet, and now we're here again together at last on the internet. We are indeed living in interesting times, aren't we? For these 3 days, we will again deliberate the issues surrounding the transitions involving entering and succeeding in higher education. Now these transitions have become even more complicated by what Ancilla calls a second transition caused by the current situation we're in. And I think we're going to have to think together, and I look forward to thinking with all of you and deliberating with you very deeply and very practically. As John W. Gardner said, a society which scorns excellence in plumbing as a humble activity and tolerates shoddiness in philosophy because of it's an exalted activity will have neither good plumbing nor good philosophy. Neither its pipes nor its theories will hold any water. And today, I hope that's going to be a good motivation for us all to remind us that we have to think about theory, we have to think about philosophy, what will help our students succeed, what will help us become better universities for our students, but also plumbing, practically. How do we make sure that the practicalities of what we do actually works? May we have philosophies and piping practices that hold water for our students and for ourselves as they try to enter and succeed in higher education across our interesting landscape here in South Africa. Now, I think we all feel that we've been through a really tough year, and I would say that the word crisis is actually quite appropriate. Now, there's this apocryphal saying that the Chinese phrase for the word crisis means danger, but it also means opportunity. And I had to Google this, as any good scholar does, to just find out what does it actually mean. Now, I'm not going to try and pronounce the word because I will completely butcher it. But what I found was the following, and I think it's quite interesting. It says the Chinese phrase for crisis is, and then, as I say, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. It looks like Weiji or something to that effect, but I didn't have a clue how to pronounce it. And it does, in fact, mean danger, apparently. However, Victor Meyer, the professor of Chinese language and literature at the University of Pennsylvania, writes that in this context, the G part actually represents the meaning of an incipient moment. In other words, a crucial point at where something begins to change. In other words, danger. A crisis consists of danger, but it also provides an incipient point where things can begin to change. And I have found that to be true in my own life. That when we are in crisis situations, it's also a situation of where the status quo is destabilized, where the ruts we've often gotten ourselves into are challenged much more easily. And before we move into the next phase where we settle into a new rhythm and into a new way of doing things, I think a crisis is an opportunity. It's a moment, an incipient moment, as is said here, where things can actually change. And I do believe that we are in such an incipient moment. And I think you'll all agree with me that we're at a point where we've weathered a big part of the initial storm. And now we're asking the question, what happens next? How do we move forward? We all spoke about emergency online teaching and learning and terms like that. What do we learn from this? How do we move forward? And specifically, when it comes to the first year and the transitions that are involved in the first year. My view, colleagues, is that higher education is more important than it's ever been for our society. I think it's true across the world, but specifically for our society. I think the first year and the transitions it entails have become even more important and more challenging than they've ever been. And the role we all play in this human endeavor, and the roles I actually should be saying, we all play in this very important human endeavor, are more important than they've ever been before. And the technology and the on-campus activity are both more important than they've ever been before, and how we handle these and what we do with them. So as we join together at this conference, may our discussions at this crucial point, at this incipient point, lead to good philosophy and good practice that aren't leaky, either of them, and also leads us forward in a thoughtful way. I would like to specifically thank Ancilla and Celine and the SANRC for organizing this conference, and for all the trouble they've gone to get us all together, and for all of you for attending, taking the time out to attend this conference and for contributing to it. May we really have an interesting and fruitful time together, and I hope to see many of you again face to face, hopefully, next time, as we meet again for the next conference next year. Have a wonderful conference.
Sanbonani, Dumelang, Molweni, Di Maceroni, Huemora Almal. Good morning and welcome to the 6th annual SANRC FYE conference. We met last in the pre-mask, pre-sanitizer, pre-2 meter social distancing era. So much has happened to us since then. The COVID-19 in this traumatic period of isolation, of disease and death through which we are all still living. From a higher education perspective, the virus launched us all into emergency mode. We had to take a sudden leap into the future and hastily engage with online teaching and learning. There was no manual, there was no set of guidelines or regulations or rules that could help us figure out exactly what to do or how exactly to deal with a crisis of this magnitude. In South Africa's best tradition of dealing with adversity, higher education professionals rose to the occasion magnificently. And I do applaud those of you whom I know have gone the extra mile, caring for your anxious and uncertain students, retraining yourselves hastily to meet the demands of online teaching and learning, empowering your colleagues, and really stepping up in service of our students. We know we have made some mistakes. There have been some missteps. We said no student left behind. Inevitably, some students were left behind. We have not always served our students as best as we possibly could have. Therefore, we approach the 6th annual SANRC FYE conference in a spirit of great humility, doing our best to make sense of the year that has happened to us, and to learn and grow much as we celebrate have gotten right. I acknowledge the fact that 2020 was exhausting and brutal, but I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that there are some lights that are flickering now at the end of this tunnel. I am awed by the global scientific effort in terms of vaccine development that has brought a great deal of hope to a situation that has so often seemed completely hopeless. The vaccines are coming, and every person vaccinated in this country will be one less person than the virus can infect. In terms of counting our blessings, the Zondo Commission of Inquiry signals a new dawn for our country. As South Africans, we are hurt, we are furious by the extent of PPE corruption and the ruthless COVIDpreneurs who are unashamed of stealing funds from medical staff who need PPE, from the poor who need food parcels, from the community needs, and from the hospitals that need beds and ventilators. But the rotten country is mobilizing against corruption. Also, let us never forget that in the dreaded year 2020, the United States turned its back upon the legacy of Donald Trump, and that essentially was a victory for the whole world. And here we are at the opening of this conference, still keeping our conference network alive. This network is invaluable, and I applaud each and every one of you for supporting this space, for supporting the SANRC. Colleagues, there are no simple answers, and it is likely that this virus will be with us for some time still. We are compelled to work together as a united community in service of our students and in service of the important work of student transitions, student support, and ultimately, student success. Having said all of that, I would like to wish you a wonderful conference experience. I truly hope that you enjoy the next few days of conferencing and networking. I would like to now ask you to await our opening keynote address from Dr. Lisa Badil Moscaritolo, all the way from the United Arab Emirates. Thank you again for your participation.
Colleagues and friends, welcome again. I have the pleasure this morning of introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Lisa Badil Moscaritolo. I was tempted to call her Dr. LBM, but she's already told me that her students have told that LBM stands for any number of undesirable things. So I am just going to call her Dr. Moscaritolo. Now, when I heard about the project that she has been working on about the global impact of COVID-19 on student affairs, along with two other colleagues that I know, I jumped at the chance to invite her to open our 6th annual SANRC FYE conference. And I was also told that she's a fabulous speaker. So here we are. Now you can read Dr. Moscaritolo's full biographical details in our information booklet. I'll just summarize as to what I see as the highlights. Dr. Moscaritolo has a truly enviable and distinguished resume, and it clearly shows a passion for students and for student affairs. She is currently Vice Provost for Student Life at the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. Before that, she was Associate Vice President of Student Affairs and Dean for Students at Pace University in New York. She's a founding member of the International Association of Student Affairs and Services. I can never pronounce this acronym correctly. I think it's IASAS. And she has also done numerous illustrious things in the field of student affairs and services, such as her participation in various high-level academic projects and related publications in the field. And I see she also notes that she loves travel, fitness, and food, and that makes her a woman after my own heart. So I believe I've now sufficiently introduced Dr. Moscaritolo to you. So please, over to you, Dr. Moscaritolo.
Thank you so much, Ancilla, and Celine and Palessa, that's going to be helping me as we go along. I'm just thrilled to be here today, so thank you so much. And I do wish I was in Cape Town, I do have to be honest, because the food and the drink is amazing, so I'm sorry I'm missing that. So I hope on your own, everyone could enjoy good food and good drink. But at least today, what we're going to have is good conversation and good discussions. So I appreciated Andre, I hope I said Andre and Ancilla's opening, because I think that really gives a good key of what's been happening. Things have been really not easy for any of us. So let me pull up my presentation. That's my campus. Isn't it beautiful? You see it in the background too. I do love what I do. I feel like I'm towards the end of my career in some ways, but I've been very fortunate. I moved over here about 2 years ago in August. So most of my time here has been around COVID. Crazy time. And one of the things that happened is through my international network, I was very close to a lot of people that you see here in the names, and I was already introduced. But people, we worked a lot internationally, sharing knowledge and networking. Somewhat what you're doing here in South Africa at this conference, we just did a little bit more globally. So this is the four of us that worked together in, I think it was in March, we started emailing and just asking, how are you doing? You know, what's going on? And we decided, the three of us, Birgit, you see Birgit Schreiber there, as some of you guys, she's me. And you also have Terry Lucier, very well known in South Africa. I knew him, but I just had the joy of learning more from him. He's an amazing researcher, and I'm learning every day. And then Brett Perazzi in the United States. We knew each other for many years. So the four of us came together, and we really wanted to hear what was happening with each other. But then we said, why aren't we chronicling what's going on around the world? We have a network now through the IASIS Association. Let's survey our students, I mean our staff, our fellow colleagues around the world. So this is how it got started. We worked on the survey. Our goal was to have the survey done in May. So we decided that our purpose, as you see here, was really to understand what was happening in COVID-19, how student affairs and services practitioners responding to the students, understanding the variations in regions and the contexts that we work, and then possibly inform practices that can help the profession globally, regionally, anything we could do to see if we can help. We are thrilled that we've been presenting. Actually, we present in the United States, we're presenting in the UK, our research. We've been doing some writing, and we got recognized for our research through Association in the United States. And that is very exciting, because this is somewhat, even though I've been doing some work, I haven't been doing as much research type of work. So anyway, we wanted to know really what were the decisions and how were universities and student affairs practitioners making decisions around COVID-19? What were the stages of these decisions? If you guys remember, that we started off thinking this was a flu possibly. So we were sending out messages, reminding people about safe practices, health hygiene practices. And then it moved from different areas with PPE and so forth. And just the messages got a lot more in the stages of the impact, a lot harder, and the responses from student affairs professionals, we wanted to know what they were. We wanted to understand the financial impact on the crisis on students and universities, and how they're dealing with the responses, like what are the responses, how we're communicating with students, what are the services that are essential, what are the groups that are most impacted by this. And just a step back, let's look at what happened back, and this was in May, what would we do differently, and thoughts on future practice. So today, and I see someone did make a chat. Oh, thank you, Carlene. I'm trying to keep up. So, but anyway, that wasn't, I don't think, directed to me. So today, what I want to do is provide the overall results and the that we found. I won't be able to touch on everything. I'll try to show some regional variations, essential services, the framework that developed, or the heuristic model that developed from our data that could also have an impact on how we work possibly in higher education, and share some implications and learning. We'll first start off with the methodology quickly. This is not always the fun part, but it's important that you know how we handled it. So if you remember, we're all in a crisis. We're all, not even sure if everyone has internet, but we decided we wanted to get as much information as possible as quickly. So we decided to use snowball sampling. We started with the IASIS Association, and then the IASIS also has connections with other student affairs associations, and we asked them to send it out. It was a questionnaire. It was quite a few responses because we wanted to know a lot. Maybe in hindsight, we should have done something a little bit differently. We could always do hindsight in many ways. But overall, it gave us some really good data to understand what was happening in some comparisons. We know we can't generalize to region or country specifically, because of our limitations of the methodology, and that we didn't ask folks to answer every question. And the reason is because we didn't know if it would apply to that context. So that was an important thought that we had. And also, we did decide to keep the survey in English, but we knew that might be a problem with Latin America. But we decided to move on. So just to tell you a little bit about the demographics of our sample. So to start off with, once we got the data, we put it into SPSS. We had about 950 responses. We did have to clean the responses. We decided after we cleaned for repetitiveness or for really, really small percentage that hardly anyone answered questions, was only demographics. We got rid of those. We had made some decisions on it. And what we decided at this point is that we were going to put regions. There were 65 countries, but it still was not enough to do any comparisons. So we used IASIS on how we're organized in regions and UNESCO on how we're going to organize. But we felt pretty comfortable with the 781 responses that we could make some comparisons. So I want to be sure when I'm talking about the different regions or the responses that you understand, I'm talking about a region of colleagues from that area that responded to the survey. So if you look here, what this tells us too is sorry, my thing is a little low. Give me a minute. This tells us what position in student affairs the staff had. Is if you notice most, let me just make sure I have this right. If you notice 47% identified themselves as mid-level to senior managers. And that was the largest group at 47%. The next largest group was 39% with officers and entry-level positions. And the smallest percentage were those that were in top-level positions at 14%. And those were those that answered this question. Also, related to the number of years working in student affairs, the largest group, as you could see, was 1 to 5 years. And then we had on the other side 15 plus years that responded to the survey on the level of years of experience. We had titles too, which helped us if we needed as well to further, but I didn't share that here. 75% were for public institutions and 25% from private. So now let's go into the part that I think is more interesting, is the findings. So as I said, just to remind you, I'm going to talk a little bit about Student Affairs Involvement, or I might say SAS, Student Affairs and Services, involvement in the pandemic, student groups impacted, essential services, student-specific support for international students, financial impact for the university and students, and then a look backwards and forward. So we found, I hope not that surprising, but in some areas it might be surprising that 86% of our sample told us that student and student services was a key player in the institutional decision making. And I think Andre said in the beginning, we should be proud of what we've accomplished. And I think Asila said that we've done amazing things. And I think this, I hope you see this as we move on in the sample. And you can see some differences, but overall, it's clear. Asia was a little clearer, and Latin America and the Caribbean participants, that they strongly agreed that student affairs was part of the decision. So we were at the table helping with the decisions. When we considered how we were making decisions, if you guys remember back, I'm sure that this might not be as much surprising either, but community safety was the utmost importance, is what the survey, the sample told us. Next was teaching and learning, ethics and care, and pretty much that was globally. The next reasons or considerations on what decisions were being made by senior management, besides hearing from the ministries, because everyone told us ministries of health, Department of Health was involved in some of the decision making. They would use that external information in making decisions on what was going to happen at the university and operation decisions. But the fourth one that was so important was for Europe, Oceania, and North America was international students, and the other regions of the world was the residential student population that was considered as we move forward. So what is this? So what about the impact on student groups? We wanted to know from our population, what was the groups that were most impacted around COVID-19? It was an open-ended survey. We used NVivo to populate the qualitative comments. And as you will see, most of the comments were that globally international students, sometimes they were just mentioned Chinese or Asian students, were the largest group impacted by the COVID-19. The second group was socioeconomic status, low income. And then the third group, which we kind of put together the comments, is students from difficult home situations. So this was situations where they were going back to crowded homes, or they didn't have the haven of the university to go to study, even if they did live at home. There was violence at the home. They were not accepted for possible LGBTQI issues around orientation and gender fluidity. So we found some of that. We found too, unable to use Wi-Fi was an issue too, and difficult. So a lot of those comments came from that kind of blue area you're seeing. And then the fourth was students with a disability also was mentioned. We did find some regional differences. These are the two areas that our respondents, our colleagues told us. In Africa, the lower socioeconomic status came first, and I'll share another slide in a minute about that. In South Africa, difficult home situations, as I mentioned, students with disability and international students came fourth in this part of the region. And in Asia, difficult home situations was the number one comment we heard, or we gathered through the qualitative answers we received. And then low students from poor families or poor situations, and then international students. This is something we pulled because we did in the beginning, Thierry and Birgit did some information. So we looked at the South Africa participants, and we did have a pretty good turnout. And you will see here that, again, highlighting the regional differences for what our colleagues told us from Africa. So this is a word cloud, and you can easily see that poor students arose as a number one concern about what population of students was most impacted. Rural students, students with special needs, such as disabilities, mental health challenges, students with no internet, as we mentioned, no devices, and those who remained on campus to study because their home situations were not conducive to learning, and other groups like then international students was mentioned. So you can kind of get an idea of some of the difference in this region and this country. So we asked our population what are the challenges? We knew international students, we had quite a bit of questions on there because, obviously we knew that international students couldn't get home and some of the things. So we asked some questions what were the challenges faced by students? And these were the four that they checked the box. And this is not that surprising. 96% in that time frame of May was highly emotionally, and they were stressed. They couldn't go home, financial hardships, fear and uncertainty of what was going to happen is what we heard. Related to essential service, this also is another thing we pulled, but I think the thing here that I just want to mention is if you look in the orange, the main services that our colleagues told us globally that were essential, they labeled as essential, were counseling, healthcare, academic support, and then the fourth one was residential life support. Some of it different, like we're just showing here. For some of it, there was just a little bit difference where student-centered in South Africa, residence life was not as, support wasn't as essential, is what the data told us. This thing I think is really important because, as I mentioned, we know students were we were very concerned about what was happening financially, and we were responding rapidly around the world on how to help our students. And these were 5 support provisions we tried to help that you could see here. So transporting home, was one. And if you could see there, that was extremely important in the Latin America area, North America, paying for that, and Asia and Africa. So all of them were pretty much across the board, the region, the transport, the money for students was a provision that was provided. Refund housing was a little bit different, as you will see in some of the regions. North America, that came up very high of an issue for our students, so to help them. And then you will see the others are all around making sure students can study in some ways. I mean, not that the others weren't important either, but like online services, free online devices, Wi-Fi, and so forth. And if you notice in Africa, that became more prevalent. And it was very clear that from our colleagues there that they were working rapidly, even more on providing financial support around free Wi-Fi, making sure there was data where they are. If they needed a laptop, those were things they were needing more so than other regions. Specific services to international students. So here, this is interesting because it's to remind you of the essential service when we asked about all students, it was around counseling and care, if you remember that. Here, what we're seeing a little bit difference is how for international students, there was a difference in the service they felt that was needed for international students, and that student accommodations came up first as the concern for our international students. Also, I want to say here some of the regional differences. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure there's a lot to tell you. Some differences here, if you look at it too, is the financial assistance, the staff support, academic support, those were the top 5 services, is in Europe and Oceania. The responses told us that financial assistance was number 1. A lot of this was because we would hear data that students were losing their jobs. So in Europe and Oceania, they have jobs on campus or part-time off campus to support their needs. And they couldn't make the rent. So they needed financial assistance. So that was shown in some of the data. Also in Asia, if I remember, correctly, that the number 1 thing that came out for Asia was not the student accommodations. It was the staff support, outreach students. That was something they had a case manager for every student, an affairs member for every international student. And the top 3 services, like we said in North America, were student accommodations, communication outreach, and financial assistance. And they talked about, there was comments throughout on student accommodations on offering singles, providing meals. I feel like when I'm talking about this, I'm going back a little bit and having a little post-traumatic stress myself, thinking about all we were doing for our students, and we were so worried about housing and food. So that was showing here, and a lot of times that's where you'll see the North America, they were not charging for housing at that time. Okay, I wanted to open a poll because I'm curious at this point to hear from all of you. Could you let me know if you are working remotely, if you can answer this? Great, I see them coming in. That means I'm still catching you guys. I have like 4 or 5 people that are still with me. Awesome. I'll check my time too to make sure I'm okay. Okay, great. Okay, let's see what we have. End poll. Okay, share the results. So it looks like 100%, closer to you are at 75 to 100% are working remotely. I've been working remotely 100% since March 8th. And so we are still operating this way, so I can appreciate that. Well, we learned from our colleagues in May that, if you would see here, that about 83%, let me just move my poll, were working remotely. And I think when we asked the question when we were doing the United States, it was closer to 60%. Some of them were back face to face. But the thing is, it's amazing. I just want to say here, the services, I just can't tell you, the survey just told us so much about how hard everyone worked to help students. And they did this at a time when they were also disheveled. I mean, we weren't in our offices. We didn't have the things that we needed. So I think that shows it. Okay, related to financial impact, I already told you a lot about the students and how we helped the students and so forth. I wanted to show you here about, we asked universities and we asked we have the regional data here. Most felt, if you see in blue, that it's going to take more than 2 years to recover from what we dealt with at universities, and this impacts us. And so that was something. Asia said a little bit less if you look in orange. They felt a year. Again, we could say some of this relates to international students. Look at this blue in Oceania. They have a lot of international students. It supports, and they were very concerned about that in North America as well. So let's look at what we learned from some of our questions related to hindsight in the future. So we asked a few questions around, what would you do differently if you had an opportunity? What was a mistake that might have been made? And overwhelmingly, very positive overall, I would say. Overwhelmingly, most said that their institutions responded quickly. If they felt like if they didn't respond quickly, I'm trying to find what it really was around, is that they felt communication could have been a little bit quicker. And you guys can think about this as well at the time, that maybe key leaders weren't part of the decisions that were being made at that time. And like I said, things just weren't timely, the communications. And that was a hard situation. We would hear too, like sometimes we're waiting for ministries, they were waiting for Department of Health. So there was a lot of external aspects that were coming in, but overall, most felt good. Now when we specifically asked a question, and this was a quantitative question, is how many of you prepared for this type of emergency? And only 25% said they prepared for a global health pandemic. We asked too, what do they think was going to happen with international mobility as a result of COVID-19? And there's a 93%, oops, I go back. 93% told us that it was going to impact international mobility. So let's run another survey. I want you to take all these questions at once if you can. I'm going to launch it. Thank you to Palessa. This is working very well. Thank you. So I'll launch the poll. If you can answer these questions, how is your institution, has your institution had a decrease of international students? Has your services changed? Have you continued to increase support services online? And are you planning hybrid or blended approach to services and programs this fall? Are you guys able to answer it? Okay. Because I don't see anyone answering. I might need, oh, good. So the first two questions I want to learn from you is related to what we heard also around COVID-19. We asked a question is, what does COVID-19 mean for internationalization of student affairs and services? It was interesting because when we defined internationalization, we didn't define it. So there was different aspects to it. However, the one thing we did hear is global cooperation. And of course, we were thrilled, those of us that work internationally and through different associations, that was exciting to hear. But then it really became this idea of decrease of international students. So that's why I wanted to hear a little bit about what you guys said. So it looks like that there has been a decrease on your campuses of international students, and your services have changed. We heard that. We heard that from the data. They were scared that actually international student services would be gone and others would be doing the work. This is some of the things we heard. This might be the same in your situation. Some said that maybe international students will have more support. That's what they were hoping. So there were some different comments around this. And some said that there was more sensitivity about the needs of international students. We just are hopefully we're going to get an article in a journal on our data on international students. But we do make some implications that we can't ignore our international students and how to serve them. And I think we did some things well, but I think we did hear from our folks that we could do better. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, so that was on those first two questions. And then the other questions, let me see if I can make sure I see these results. Oops, goes with this question that I just put here. I just can't see my poll results. So when we asked about what do you predict the changes are, now remember this is May 2020, and we heard that there would be an increase of online practice and services, and you just told me that that's what we're continuing to do. This is, as Ancilla said, this is not going away, this is us. We still have to serve our students and be creative in what we do. So that shows there. I can't see the results of the last one for some reason. I'm not sure why, but that's okay. We'll just move on. But anyway, the other question that we heard from our staff is that how our jobs would drastically change. And I think we've felt that. My athletic coaches are now doing online fitness classes. They're doing online about food. I mean, they have totally changed. They've done so many different things with the students to connect. And there's some great things about it too, because they're connecting with students that they wouldn't have connected with. So that's a neat experience for our students, for our staff. We heard from them on that, and for our students. So they've seen our coaches in different ways. And so I think we've all done different things. Our housing people had to pack up room more than they ever had to. We had 80% of our students that couldn't get their belongings. So we're all doing different things. But this one really is we also sensed fear. In the comments, there was a lot of fear about what was going to happen because of reduced budget, staffing changes. Athletics in North America, there was fear, are we going to even have athletics? I mean, this was in May 2020. I'm just giving you some thoughts on here. Restricted student activities, we're living this. We know this. I think we just heard, about us keeping the online. This is an order too of comments that we coded. Hybrid and blended student affairs and services. And I think you guys probably said you're doing this in the fall. I couldn't get the results, but I'm guessing you are planning for this. We are planning this. Our orientation, as we're speaking about orientation and transitions, we're talking about how we can add some face-to-face opportunities in a healthy way. And what would that look like for students to come to campus? We still don't know what's going to happen. We're waiting for the ministry to tell us how we're going to have teaching, but we're hoping we can open the halls a little bit more, whether the classes are on campus or online. We'll probably have a hybrid approach, and we know we're doing that for the summer. It's going to be students online and some classes hybrid. Also, this more health programming, online teaching and learning, communications to students, and upskilling. Like I said, thank goodness for Google and learning new things, right? New books and new things. Quickly, I want to make sure I have enough time. Let's see how I'm doing. Okay, am I okay? I started, yeah, I think I'm okay. This is be the quick one, and then we'll have questions and answers. Okay, so real quickly, I mentioned this framework for understanding student success and emergent. The neatest thing was we really found how our student affairs and service practitioners, obviously we are toned into student success, handling social justice issues, doing whatever we can. And we found that this data almost could be placed in 3 domains, even though they cross at times, but the personal domain, the finances, the rapid issues we were dealing with for international students to find them housing because they didn't have it. find laptops, Wi-Fi, all these personal domain things. Also students with disabilities, the communication with those students to help them. All these things we did are in the personal domain. The public domain, this is where we look at the infrastructure where it failed us and look at the Wi-Fi and the internet and some issues there. The public domain we also looked at as, like, for example, immigration, all the things that were happening. There were so many webinars we heard from about immigration, helping the international students. There was new regulations coming in different parts of the world, and we consider that as part of the public domain. And we were mitigating all these, because if we didn't mitigate them in some ways, we wouldn't have the success of the students. We were concerned about that, and that showed in the data. Some of the social, cultural, the family issues. It was difficult, but some were able to get students on campus if they were really in bad situations. So in some parts of the world, so the social, cultural domain. So what I want to say here is we still want to test this a little bit more, but this started us thinking about our work in student affairs and how we mitigate a lot of these things, and how the university is a haven, and how it helps students, and they don't have some of these resources. They might not have the strong internet in their home, but they have it when they come to campus, and they didn't have it. And I think you guys talked about that. So another implication is we were overwhelmed with just how, I know this picture is kind of, but before I go to the picture, we were just overwhelmed about how much support and how student affairs and services was reaching out to students. It was really, really amazing. There was something called Wellness Warriors they had. There was virtual RAs, as you would imagine, just the staff outreach, the financial, the webinars on sport. It was just goes on and on. But what does this tell us about how we work with our students now, and some implications? And this is where this picture comes into play that I love. We're finding different ways to support our students and how we talk to them, whether we are doing any face-to-face or we're online. We're finding the implications are we're meeting with students in different ways. Sometimes they have the camera on, sometimes they don't, sometimes they chat, WhatsApp. I used the phone before, but I never really used WhatsApp as much, or Messenger, or Instagram. Oh my gosh, we get Instagram messaging all the time now. So we're really, I think the implications is we are so creative. We're going to continue to try to find ways to reach out to students and make them know that we're here. And that's where some of these little handshakes, hugs, high fives, and some of the things that I thought was kind of neat to picture. The other thing that we found out from our data is that we're using social media, obviously. And I think before we started knowing this, even before COVID, we were doing a lot more. We were looking at social media as a tool for engagement. How many students are we engaged with through social media? Well, that just became a lot larger. Now we're also looking at learning. What are the messages we're sending that they can learn something, whether it was around health hygiene or using our student organizations to help us around mental health and well-being, our psychology did stuff, our student council. So I think the implications here is that I know we weren't ignoring it, but we have to embrace social media. It's just something we have to do. And we have to look at that as not just, oh, gosh, this horrible, I got to keep track of everything that's going on. It's not about that. It's about engaging with the students and how you could do that through social media. Here, the best picture, because not everything can be positive and rosy. It's okay to say it's not, and it wasn't. And I think we all realize that sometimes it wasn't. But what we did realize is how important counseling services was and how essential it was. So we cannot forget that. We have to continue thinking about how we're offering those resources. But then there's the well-being side. Not everything is about counseling services. It's also how do we make sure our students are well. And some of the things, like I said to you, some that happened during COVID, wellness warriors, using social media in the way for well-being messages, fitness, all these well-being messages, how to take your classes in a crowded home, anything like this, any of these type of messages. And then every conversation we have with our students, I tell my staff, we need to know how the student is. We have to think about How is that student doing? How well are they doing? This is a conversation for everyone, even our coaches, you know, everyone, conversation with all of our students. I think that's something we have to keep in mind as we move forward. This is one that's very important. We heard from our one of our Asia colleagues is, oh my gosh, what happened to student affairs, our philosophy of student development and learning? Where is it? How are we going to do this? This is a concern. This is no doubt something we have to look at. And we've been looking at it at AUS, and I'm sure you did too. We offered a lot of learning around leadership, awareness programs, community service we did, and these were all learning opportunities, and we processed later too to have the learning. And we need to think about what are those digital tools we can use to help the engagement. The psychosocial development is the one that we really have to think about. How do we help the students engage with each other psychosocially online? I'm continually looking at different digital tools. Like right now, this is hard. Breakout rooms are hard. They're kind of clumpy. They're not great, you know? I mean, we do them, but they're not great. What other digital tools? And this goes into upskilling and things we have to think about. Changes in our work. So I love this picture. This is us. This is me some of the days. You got my good groom day, right? Right over here to the right. So the reality is this has not been easy for any of us in changes of our work. And so there's implications here. And I hope we take some of the good with the bad and we learn from it. We have a webinar with IASIS about taking care of ourselves, some research that a couple of people did. And one of the things is people are enjoying some aspects of this. We need to think about what those aspects are and how could we keep it. We never thought we could do student affairs remotely. Now we are learning some things. So how could we have a better work-life balance? These are some implications we can think about as we move back and think about it. And we're also apprehensive. We're nervous. Our Oceania colleagues have told me that they're going back face-to-face and they're all really nervous. They don't even know how to interact with students. They're just as nervous, apprehensive. These are things that we have to embrace. And you're doing it by these professional development. It's not easy, but we've got to get involved and stay connected to each other. We're not alone. We got to take a deep breath. We've got to see what's happening. These are some of my thoughts. I wanted to end with something I've been trying to do to find new ways we can interact with each other. I'd like you to open up your chat if you can. I'm going to try to find mine here. And what I would like you to do is I'd like you to share 1 or 3 words in a reaction, but don't publish it yet. We're going to do something called Storm Chat. This is something you guys could do as well and use it. So I want you to put in a few words of your reactions to this, 1 to 3 words. And we're going to do a countdown, and then we're going to ask you to click publish. We ready? 3, 2, 1. You guys have your reactions? Let's try it. Overwhelming encouragement. Okay. Great progress. Yeah. Okay, well, if you have anything else to add, no problem. But anyway, this is something you could do with your students too, or do with other people. So I'll open now for, oh yeah, I'm grateful. We're not alone either. We're all with each other. Let me tell you, we are the passionate people in college campuses, it's for sure. And it showed in our survey. So you're not alone. Okay. So I want to open up if there's any questions. I hope I did it on time. This is not always easy, but if anyone has any questions, I'll stop sharing.
Colleagues, we have the chance to interact more directly now with Lisa. We can use the chat function, or we can use the raise hand function. And I'll try and facilitate as many of these as I can in the few minutes we have. I think we have about 5 minutes. I'd like to kick us off, Lisa. There's a question I've been dying to ask, and it's kind of a real question. There's a real fear of COVID out students.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make a bold statement to say that students generally not very good at wearing masks and social distancing. And, they love to socialize. I think some students would say they live to socialize. So I wondered how one gets out these big sort of messages, these public health messages about sanitizing, about masking, about social distancing to students, especially in congregate settings like the residences, like the lecture rooms? How do we actually get this message out to students from a student affairs perspective?
Yeah, I think something we have to really think about. I will tell you it's context driven, because here in the United Arab Emirates, you follow the rules because you get fined. So I'm saying there's different contexts, but however, I still do. We've asked our students to help us in these messages. Now, we're still not on campus, so we don't have a lot of students on campus, but I would say that we use our students, we do skits, we make sure those that understand the importance of masks and sanitizing. We have to be in the halls. We do have some students in the halls, and we're very diligent. Our staff, you know, unfortunately, even though they see the staff, they are in plexiglass, and they have to remind our students to keep the distance. We had to, this is because of the ministry, we have had to, and this is the public domain, we've had to close some of our community spaces and housing. They told us we had to. So that might be something you have to look at too. And fortunately, out of the times we've done that for the last 2 semesters, we've only had about 200 students on campus. We had 1 outbreak. So I mean, the data does show it. So I think if you also share the data, you know, thank you, look at what we've come, what we've done with our residence halls. You guys have done an amazing job. Look where we are, no cases. And then meanwhile, they see our faculty and staff, because our faculty and staff live on campus, and some of them had more cases than our students that live in. So, I mean, I think the messaging, I would say using students is, you know, student leaders, try to keep the message. You know, unfortunately, sometimes you do have to be hard, you know, nose. And the thing is, if they want to, I know some people don't, I think we're at a situation now, and I'd love to hear what you guys think in chat. Some students don't want to come back. We're finding that students want to stay online. I don't know what if it's fear, you know, with their families. Now, I understand why, because just so you guys know, we have a lot of students from India, Bangladesh, and you guys know what's happening there. It's very scary. So they don't even know when that will end. You know what I mean? Like when things will calm down there. So I think we have to think about how do we do psychosocial development, like I mentioned, in a safe way, and show ways that would happen, and use students maybe to exhibit that, and maybe be fair, and maybe be honest about staff having concerns about that too.
Absolutely.
You know, be real. This is all something we're new at. But again, if the ministry, and I think you guys probably have to listen to the ministry, if they say we want campuses back, you got to start getting back. And how do you do that? And I have staff that has concerns too. For example, our ministry just told us real quickly is that finals have to be on in person, but we have many students that can't. So we're doing an exception process. We're going to have 30% coming to campus. That's it out of 100% for finals. And my staff has to supervise it. They're nervous. You know, so I mean, I think it's a hard situation you have to balance, but we don't want to put it down. But that's just my thoughts real quickly.
We have about a minute left, and I think there's one very direct question from Dr. Welcome Kubeka about which countries were able to complete the survey.
We had 65 countries. Oh, the list of countries? Oh gosh. I could get it to you. There were 65 countries. The only ones that were a little less was in the Latin America region, but we had 12, if I remember, in Africa. The North American and Caribbean, you know, we had all of them, if you consider that. Asia, a lot from the Philippines, China, Hong Kong, which is part of China, Macau, Korea, Japan. Did we have any? I think we had some responses from Japan. It wasn't huge. And we did have trouble in South America, and we think it's because we didn't have time. We made the decision not to, not to transcribe in different languages, mainly because what we'd have to do afterwards would take too long. So that's kind of, I don't know if that helps you. What am I missing? Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji. A lot of places where we have international context already, We have 24 to 30 associations in IASIS that we sent it out to. Oh, UK, I didn't even mention Europe, sorry. Italy, Ireland, yeah, so Germany, that gives you an idea. I'm sure I'm missing some.
I think we're a minute over time. Not that I want to interrupt our wonderful discussion. I think we don't have any more comments. So I want to thank Lisa. I think this opening keynote was truly important because it portrayed something of that global backdrop for the pandemic. And for me, it helped set the scene and help us to see our place in the bigger scheme of things. I mean, the truth is that sometimes we are guilty of tunnel vision and just sort of keeping our heads down. And I think if we've all ever felt alone or exhausted during this journey, as we went about our work with the students and universities, I mean, this address was important in terms of showing us that, you know, we're all going through the same thing and we're not alone. So Lisa, thank you very much for bringing this message to us. We really appreciate. I'm sure people will send you commentary as they will at different points after this. And we just want you to know that there will be something lovely in the mail for you as a token of appreciation afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Welcome to the first professional development workshop for the conference. You can read all about Prof. Joe Cusio's long and distinguished career in higher education in our information booklet. He is professor of psychology at Marymount, California University. And I'm actually blown away by the fact that he was a 14-time recipient of the Faculty Member of the Year Award on his home campus. And he was also a recipient of the Outstanding First Year Student Advocate Award from our colleague, our sister organization, the National Resource Center for the First Year Experience and Students in Transition. So I just want to point out something about what a thoughtful scholar he is. I had read about Joe Cusio's work, but I first noticed him on the NRC's first year experience listserv. Now, if you know the listserv, it's quite a highly active space and people are always asking questions. And I happened to notice that when Joe Cusio responded to people, he did so with great attention to detail and in a way that showed a sort of level of experience and also a depth of knowledge. He seemed to always be happy to generously send out his work to people. And I thought it's worth saying that that kind of generosity of spirit is, it's an admirable trait in a scholar. So thank you for that, Joe. I asked Prof. Cusio to run this workshop because we often see students in what I call career confusion. And the kind of career confusion that impacts their lives and sometimes, often enough, leads them to exit the system. And I asked him what we can do to better support students in terms of career guidance. And he very kindly agreed to do this workshop for us. So, Prof. Cusio, over to you.
Thank you, Ansel, for the very personalized introduction. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining me. I know it's the end of your day. It's the beginning of my day. It's about 6:30 here. So you'll be going to dinner after this and I'll be going to breakfast. So we're having breakfast. And thanks for inviting me. This is my first professional experience with professionals from South Africa. I've never been to your country, but I have to say, when I was younger, my brother and I used to love to study flags of other countries and rank and rate them in terms of their aesthetic appeal. And South Africa was always at the top of our mutual lists. And so that's why I had that flag up there. It's partly nostalgic for me. And Scylla did a very warm introduction. Just one other note about me, because I know, just like our students, they respond to the messenger as much as the message. And I think that's true of conferees as well. I'm not a career development specialist. I'm a faculty member, or as you would say, I got to watch my language, lecturer or instructor. And as most instructors here in graduate school, we don't learn a lot about teaching. We learn on the job. And student motivation was always a challenge, an issue for me when I first started teaching, particularly first year students. So the issue of what motivates students, what keeps them interested in our classes and in university in general. And also as a faculty member, I was expected to do academic advising. That's the way it works at some of our institutions here in the States. So it was in the context of how do I motivate students in class, and then with talking with students about their major and career, and still use the word confusion. And I noted a lot of that with my advisees as well. So it became clear to me, probably by my fourth or fifth year into teaching, that careers are an important element of student motivation, not only in their classes, but whether they're going to complete college or not. They need to see some connection between all this academic stuff in front of them and where they want to go. So I ended up partnering or attempting to partner with reaching out to student affairs folks who are always very gracious to work with faculty. And that's where all this started. My interest in first year students in particular, we started trying to figure out ways to integrate career services, as you call them, into the first year so students could start thinking about it early, get excited about where all their academic experiences were leading to. Now, I was fortunate as a lecturer or faculty member that the institution I worked at, the reward system was such that I could research students. I could research student success. And so I started doing some writing about connecting with student affairs and connecting academic and career services, which I would, keeping an eye on the chat room, Celine. Okay. I'm keeping on. I appreciate you. I'm going to appreciate your comments. Please keep them coming in. This is a bit of a stretch where I'm talking at you, but we will continue to do it this way. So I was fortunate to have my writing count toward my scholarship, and some of it, when internet broke in the late 90s, early 2000, as Ancilla pointed out, I started sharing my stuff virtually, and it's the World Wide Web, and then things went viral, and that's where it led to some of these international connections. And as Ancilla said, her connection with me was through the listserv, and I guess here I am. I say that to let you know that I do what you do, particularly if there are instructors out there in career development professionals and advisors. It's really what I'm going to talk about there. It sort of grew organically out of day-to-day work with students that you do. Before I launch into the slides with Celine's help, I want to say I really do value your input. I know this is hard. As an Italian-American guy, I really like to see body language. I like to be close to you. We'll do the best we can, but I would appreciate your input anyway at any time. Particularly, I want to make sure that what I'm saying is, contextualized or situated in the South African experience. I'm going to be pausing with regularity to make sure that the points I'm making, how they fit or fail to fit into your system, so we can massage them as need be. But I would encourage you at any time, as some have already, please use the chat room. I'm not as a typical male, I'm not a great multitasker, but I'll try to keep an eye on that chat room, maybe with Celine and Ancilla's help. And I really value your questions and your input. Also watch my language. I've already slipped saying faculty. You tend to use lectures. We say curriculum. I don't know if that means classes or courses, or you use modules for courses. If my language confuses you, please stop me and say, Joe, what do you mean by that? I don't want to lose you because of linguistic stuff. And lastly, you see my email on this slide. I'm very willing to follow up with anyone if there are details they'd like more. And I mentioned to Ancilla and Celine, if folks would like access to these slides or any of the visuals, please please feel free to access them. They're yours to use in your classes, in your work, if you would like. Okay, with that done, Celine, could we advance to the first piece of content, the next slide, if you can? Thank you. You know, with my students, and I think it's true of all of us, we need to do the why before the what. Why is this topic even worth discussing on an hour and a half at the end of your day at a national conference? That's what I'm after here. Why should we be taking this topic seriously? And in a nutshell, I see three key reasons why. Career development, career services plays a critical role in student retention or persistence and degree completion. In other words, they stay from term to term and complete. I hear you use the word throughput. So if South Africa, really throughput rates are important, I see career development as a critical piece of that puzzle. When students have some crystallization, as we call it, or understanding of where they're going with terms of their vocation, they have more of a sense of purpose or direction. Their motivation increases. In a national study here by American College Testing, a number of years ago, they asked retention experts or program directors, what's the number one reason in your view, in your experience with students, why American students leave prematurely without completing? And I was expecting academic issues like study skills, learning strategies. No, number one ahead of those, ahead of time management, was motivation, goals. They didn't, you know, the expression, if there's a way, there's a will. Well, if there's no will, there's no way. Their argument was that we were losing students, even students who are academically capable, because they didn't see the purpose or meaning or connection between the academic world and where they wanted to go with their life. So goals matter to retention. And if you look at today's students, ask them what their number one reason is going to college. Now you have Jennifer doing one of the keynotes. She worked at UCLA. They did national surveys since the 60s about this. In the 60s and 70s, at least in the States, when you ask freshmen, first-year students, why are you in college? They would go off and give answers to get a well-rounded education, to develop a meaningful purpose in life, broad sort of intrinsic goals. That changed over the decades. Now, if you ask our students, why are you in university? It's prepare for a career, get a better job. So their goals are clearly, they're very, how we say, career-minded in terms of going to the university. This is not to say that we should encourage them to have an intrinsic interest in learning for its own sake, but the reality is that they look at university as a way station, as a connection to where they want to go vocationally. So this is a powerful topic, I think, for your overall national objective of increasing students' completion rates. Now, particularly equity, which is an issue in our country, as well as your first generation students in particular. As you know, their reason for being in university is to improve their economic situation, to achieve economic stability and socioeconomic mobility. So this issue of connecting careers with persistence is particularly true for first generation students. You may be familiar with the term social capital. They don't have anyone home who can coach them, who's been through this, who can say this is why this academic experience is so important for your future quality of life. It's the career development professionals that are well positioned to provide the social capital for first generation students of color that they don't have at home. So I know that's a challenge in your country, as I did my best to do my homework about your issues, but rural, low-income students of color, their persistence rates, we need to improve that. For these students, the degree is so critical for an improved quality of life. We have the very same problem in the States. Not so much rural as urban students of color, housed in deprived conditions, no family history of going to college, low income, low success rates. We face similar challenges. Career development and career integration early in the experience is critical, I think, for the success of all students, but particularly for students who are first generation students where we want to improve our equity results. Secondly, on a higher level, I guess, besides just getting through college, is identity formation. There's an American comedian, I always liked her line, I always wanted to be somebody, but I should have been more specific. Well, your career is such, as you know, so important to who you are. It just strikes me so much when someone, you introduce to someone and then they ask you, what do you do? Who you are and what you do are so integrally connected. They're an integral part of the self. And you know, I was reading Dr. Andre Van Zyl, if I mispronounced the name, and he talks about the importance of a holistic approach to student success for South African students. And that is certainly the case in our states. That's what's my little visual there on the side. We need to look at the whole self. In fact, the origin of the first year experience in America, there was a Canadian graduate student who did her thesis on how this all started, which has become a national organization in your country. It started at the University of South Carolina, and it was a book read by the president and other members of the universities who were trying to do something to improve freshmen satisfaction with the college experience. They felt they were being treated like a number, that they were not being treated as whole human beings. And there was a book by Nevitt Sanford, the man who's known for the idea of balancing challenge with support, a counseling psychologist with a career orientation background who wrote a book, Where Colleges Fail. And his thesis was colleges fail when they fail to treat the student as a whole person. And they just slice out the intellectual or academic piece of their development and don't connect it with other elements of the self. And it's the same thesis that Dr. Andre wrote about in the Journal of Student Affairs, an interview that Ancilla and Scilla did, and I think Celine was with her on that interview as well. You know, and I know that COVID is a theme here. Gosh, the emotional part of that while I'm at it, that piece of the whole pie. We know there's some kind of a term in psychology, a post-lingering effect of things like COVID. So even if when we get back to in-person stuff, we certainly need to keep in mind their social and emotional issues. And of course, the one at the very bottom of that, or the pillar of that, as I have it, vocational. That's all part of that larger picture of holistic development. I can't speak for South Africa, but again, we lose so many students in the States who are academically eligible to continue. They lose for other elements of that wheel besides their intellectual capability, and that includes their social and emotional well-being and their sense of direction and connection with their future career in life. And lastly, and I apologize for the length of time I'm speaking at you, let's go beyond college now and track them. You may be familiar, I'm not sure if they do this in South Africa, but we have these what are called Gallup polls. They are surveys. And we're surveying college graduates. National, I believe these are international results. Career satisfaction, career engagement is the top predictor of life satisfaction or personal well-being if you track students beyond college. I know we want them to complete. Career services can help them complete, but aren't our goals even loftier than that? We want them to have a satisfied, happy, they want them to have lifelong well-being. The attention that we place on careers has a long-term, lifelong impact. That's an outcome that's harder to measure, but a very powerful one that I see career services playing a pivotal role for. I'm sorry, by that cartoon that kind of got cut off there at the bottom. The punchline is, let me read it from, it's a student seeing a career counselor, and he said, let me see how this goes. Oh shucks, I wish you could be happy. It's cutting off, but something, basically the counselor is saying, I wish I could be more specific. I want you to have a happy life and blah, blah, blah. I wish I could be more specific. It's a spin-off on Lily Tomlin. I'm sorry it got cut off on the bottom. But it's the idea was of the cartoon, or the image was that career counselors are in a position to help students articulate the importance of finding a fulfilling career and living a happy and fulfilled life. I know I talked at you there, but the bottom line is that careers are very important. I'm trying to make a case in this over-explained first slide. Yet, and students know that, careers matter to them, but in the States, only 1/4 of students who are asked about their career are clear about what their career goals are. There is a lot of, I'll use Ancilla's word, career confusion. Some of that is developmental. You may be familiar with the research of the human brain, the part of the brain that enables us to think ahead and plan ahead and connect the present and the future. The prefrontal cortex does not fully mature until the early mid-20s. As usual, boys are beyond girls. But you're asking 18-year-olds to project ahead into their future life when they're neurologically not ready to do that. They need scaffolding, support to make that connection. Secondly, they're very confused about career knowledge. They don't know the variety of careers available to them, and how should they? How would they know that? So the idea that students have their careers figured out before they come to the university, which is the assumption we still make a lot in the States. We're trying to get better at that. The reality is that students decide on their major and career more so during college than before college. We need to reassess that assumption that they've come in here career ready. We're not making the assumption they're coming in here academically ready. So we've got all these support services. But should we start talking about students being underprepared in terms of career decisions, just like they are academically underprepared to handle the challenges of critical thinking and learning that we know they need so much support for? The reality is, in the States, a lot of students pick majors and careers prematurely. They end up changing. There's a whole lot of changing going on. Sometimes we catch them early. Other times the change they get off track and they have to backtrack to a different major, a field of study. Some of them fall off track. Sorry, I'm obsessed with this track thing. And they don't graduate at all. So the idea of early career service and development for students who are confused, and even I would argue, even those students who are convinced they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a business or engineer, aren't there subfields within that they have to decide? What branch of healthcare are they going to go into? What type of engineering? What field of business? Human resources, marketing, finances? Even those who say, yes, I want to do this, they need help in parsing out, how can I say, the subfield within the general field in which they are pursuing. So bottom line, critically important. I'm sorry it took me a while to get through that, but I think it was important to underscore the value of this topic, I think, for the conference and for your national agenda. Can I ask the group, and Celine, and so you might have to help me here with the chat. I know should I just click on chat here to see what questions are there already? Is that okay? I'm so paranoid now. Yeah, I'm so paranoid about, because yeah, okay. Yeah, Carleen, thank you for your input. Certainly COVID, we want to be mindful of that, and also the vocational and social and emotional aspects of the holistic wheel are important. My question to you, and I could do polls, I wanted to minimize technological challenges, and I like to hear people's voices in your own words. Can I ask you, it seems to me that in America, it's an inconvenient truth that students are very confused about majors and careers, and we need to do more to help resolve that confusion early. Can I ask you, what are we doing now in South Africa, even if it's something not doing well, because we're not doing it well in the States, to help the undecided students, or as we call them, exploratory students, or students who are still investigating, students who come into university and they have to pick their courses that first term, and they're confused. What do we do for them? A, and B, start with that. And B, what about students who think they know what they're going to do, but soon find out they've made a mistake, that they've made a poor choice, it's not a good fit? Can we do anything to help them to transition to a better fit before we lose them from university altogether? Now, Carlene raised her hand. Do I just...
So I'm Carlene. I'm an independent research psychologist working with a project focused on student well-being and success. And the research that we do is to understand in a holistic sense, both the positive and negative pathways that contribute to the eventual outcome that students face, whether they've adjusted or transitioned or completed their degrees, or whether something had hindered for them to then eventually, unfortunately, drop out. So in researching this within the Study Well research project, we had quite a few interviews with different people from different facets within the system. And what's concerning is, even though there is some guidance in terms of career choices, that there's often institutional limitations in terms of the courses that students can attend, that they get waitlisted for other courses and then have to enroll for something else, or don't understand the implications of what it means to study a particular course with very little guidance on what you're going to do with that at the end of the day. There are, of course, wonderful examples as well where students can go into a type of rescue situation where they get helped and facilitated in terms of what offers are available, and staff that go beyond the call of duty to kind of get students in, even if it is for a waitlist course, so that in that time they can better prepare for the course that they really do want to do. And then, of course, the funding implications with all of that. So I think that's just my perspective on what I've heard and what we've researched and what we notice.
Thank you. Very helpful. If a student does make a choice that we have this a lot in the States, where I'm going to be a doctor, and they don't really understand the challenges ahead. It's not a realistic assessment in terms of their abilities. They start off and realize they don't like blood, or it's not a good fit for their talents and strengths. Can I ask, and this is not a criticism, because there's universities in the States that vary widely, how much wiggle room do they have to be able to transition to a better fit? Or do we help them in that transition from one prematurely chosen field to one that they can get excited about? Is there much wiggle room? I may be using an expression not from much flexibility for them to self-correct. I think Andre had a hand or a comment. Let's see. Sorry to be toggling here. One of our this is Andre, I think, yes, and I hope I'm pronouncing names correctly. If not, please pardon. One of our biggest national issues is that we have a joblessness rate of 35% or more if you measure it differently. This often means students are selecting courses based on what they think are their best options for getting a job. At my institutions, 45 to 55 of students indicate most important reason selecting their qualifications, their job opportunities, so much lower on a hierarchy of need than job satisfaction or even fit. It is very difficult to advise them. What advice do you have? Thanks. Well, yeah, this actually predicts something I was going to suggest before. This is true of all students, but particularly first generation students who want to return on their investment. Their families want to return on their investment. So they look at careers that is going to have the highest starting salary and the highest employability immediately on graduation. Sometimes those are called STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and they are often that's not often a good fit for them. As far as solutions are concerned, in the interest of time, I'm going to cite one that has worked somewhat for me, and from conversations I've had other folks, is the use of peer models, alums, recent alums. At the University of Colorado, where I'm doing some, I guess you'd call it consulting, they call them young adult mentors, other words, yams, like sweet potatoes, young alums who just graduated from college of a similar first generation, maybe low income, who have made decisions about careers based on fit and succeeded, and connecting them in a mentoring way with current students, what we call near peers, students that students can identify with, who are like themselves, who have walked the path, chosen a path in this case that really reflected what an alignment between their goals, their needs, their values, their talents, and succeeded at it, employing them as role models to encourage our current students to do the same thing. I found as I got older, students identified less with me, and I needed to rely on their peers, either upper division students, particularly those that the lower division students can identify with, either in terms of color or chosen major or culture. That would be off the top. There may be others, and I'm making a note here of things perhaps to send to you by email when I'm finished. But Andre, I would go that with number one, and I guess I probably should see what the other messages are, and I don't want to leave everybody out. Oh, thanks, Andre. You're very kind. How about the wiggle room question? It's the flexibility one. It's okay if you can say, Joe, there's not a lot of opportunity for students to redirect. Even Andre's point's well taken. Now, let's say we've convinced them that this isn't a good fit. Now they are willing to make an adjustment to find a better fit, which would increase their probability of completion and perhaps ultimate life satisfaction. How does the system work in helping students transition to a new field of study? Is there opportunity for that? Almost no wiggle room. Okay, thanks. That's the way it is in some states here too. Other institutions like the University of Rhode Island, they've actually created an office of undecided students and students in transition, meaning transition to a different major. They wanted to give them a home and trying to get to them early before they lose them. I know resources are tight. We're speaking ideals here, but I just wanted to get a sense of how that went. How many career, yeah, Ancilla.
If I might just add, to answer your question a bit more explicitly about the wiggle room, I would say that students are fairly locked into the choices that they make once they enter the system. There's financial implications.
Yes, I saw that.
And of course, there's all the additional pressures, particularly in terms of first generation Black African students, in terms of helping their families make good on the investment they've made in getting them to university, and the pressures of helping the family escape generational poverty.
Yes.
These are intense cultural pressures.
Yes.
And in addition to that, one also has to consider the disconnect with the schooling system, where students don't always receive the best advice in terms of career options, career development, career support. So they come to university without that sort of core of knowledge about what possibly might suit them best.
Yes. So you're saying that they might not only be uninformed, they may be actually misinformed, not getting good high school guidance. We assume that guidance is high quality before they reach us, but that could be a gratuitous assumption. They may be coming in not receiving quality career guidance prior. And I suspect the career guidance is lots of, psychometric tests, vocational interest tests, or Ancilla, I'm sorry.
Yes, and I think that's also in addition to just the uncertainty of having very little maturity at the average age of 18 to be able to make these decisions about your future life path. And that's how you enter university.
Yes.
So I guess the questions are, how do we help them become a little bit more directed in terms of what they want to do and suit them best?
Yes. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration. I know Jennifer had one of her keynotes is on cross-functional. Certainly a challenge in the States is better collaboration between the universities and the schools, not only in terms of academic preparedness, but in this case, even career preparedness. I know that's another whole challenge. I know these are policy issues, but I've always felt those folks in the first year experience movement, we not only advocate for students, we have to agitate for students as well. Policy change. I don't know if you have a place at the table, but those powers that be need to hear these student experiences, those who work so close to students. We have that challenge in the States. We have people running universities, business professionals, but not necessarily who maybe have the financial wherewithal to support our institutions, but are not always in tune with the realities of the student experience. I know that's a challenge, and that's another sort of partnership we might want to explore further. I know we need to do that in the States. Partnerships with the schools, partnerships with the decision makers who formulate policy, in some cases without awareness of the true challenges that our students face. I want to check the chat again. If I don't get through all the slides, know their slides are available to you and they're pretty detailed. They spoke, yes, this tends to extend, that's great. Thank you, Mike. Same true in the States. And again, that's a preparedness issue, linguistic. We have a lot of Spanish-speaking students struggle the same way. Were there other, someone mentioned the challenge of those who have a family-going tradition being pressured into certain careers. That is absolutely true in the States too. The father's a doctor, they want the son to be a doctor. The father's an engineer. I forget the lady who mentioned it, but I wanted to reinforce that as well, that the challenge of career pressure to get a good paying job, certainly true of first generation students, but even, how would you say, continuing generation students. That is another issue. In the States, there's a term that we didn't really take off. We, not only to retain the student, we need to retain the family. Family, that's another partnership. We need family newsletter, family orientation. There's this constant, systemic approach to student success, and we are articulating some of the key partners that in the ideal scenario we need to communicate with to ensure success, whether it be the schools, policymakers, family members, in addition to work cross-functionally with each other. I haven't gotten to the faculty, the lecturers yet. We need to connect all this stuff to the curriculum. We're coming to that as yet another partnership. Thank you. That was a useful. I just wanted to see what many of the schools and towns lack resource and not able. It's a resource issue. Yeah, I know. We need sometimes to put our money where our mouths are. If we're serious about throughput rates, and we need to advocate for our students and agitate for policy change. I'm going to move forward to the next slide. Is that okay, guys? Thanks so much. I'm very happy with your willingness to share. Now, this is the ideal career development. In other words, let's go from the why to the what. Now, I know this is ideal. I know the challenges. They're true in the States. But what if we could create the perfect career development program that would improve student persistence and fulfillment in terms of their major and career goals? It starts with self-awareness. Getting students, we would help students understand their strengths, their needs, their values, their talents. We talk about career vocation. Vocation is supposed to be a calling, like vocal, truly. And in the States, I know you don't use the word liberal arts in South Africa, I don't believe, but one of the goals originally of our colleges was helping students to know themselves, self-awareness. And certainly that's the critical piece, not only of a college education in general, but the first step. Students need to know themselves before they know what career they're going to choose for the rest of their life. It seems so obvious, but we skip that step. Then awareness of career options. They need to acquire knowledge about career paths open to them. You know, our studies show that you ask students what careers are there out there. They can only mention a fraction of the options that are available career-wise, and they typically go to, you know, the doctor, lawyer, engineer, business. They're really not even aware of, and not surprisingly, how would they know, or even the range of majors that are available to them. And that number is growing. That's why, please excuse my lame attempt at American or Italian-American humor here. Wasn't it easier in the old days when all you had to worry about, you're going to be a hunter or a gatherer? Those are my only options when the student goes to a career counselor. Now I can't keep up with the variety of new careers, particularly that are being generated by technology. And students are not even aware of these, and it's all hard for all of us too. So certainly that's step 2, aware of self, aware of the options that are available to us. Also, the point I made before, students are confused about, and I need your help with this, how this works in South Africa, between you have majors, students pick a major field of study. They are often confused how you can get to the same career through different majors. For example, in the States, if you want to be a lawyer, there are a number of majors that can lead to law, or business. You don't have to necessarily major in business to enter a career in business, particularly if you get a hands-on experience and a minor. And then some majors can lead to different careers. I mean, they look at majors and career like a linear path. They don't see the family of careers that relate to a major, and they don't see sometimes how the family of the same a family of majors can lead to the same career. Carlene, more aligned to specific careers. I'm not following that. Carlene, could you elaborate? My question here is, how do we help them? And do academic advisors here's another partnership. You do have academic advisors in South Africa. In the States, we have a rigid division too often. Academic advisors on the academic affairs side of the organization, and career service professionals on the student affairs side. One is helping with majors, the other helping with career, but in students' minds, the major and career go together. So I'm also curious about if we have any academic advisors in addition to career specialists out there, and how is that collaboration going? Can academic advisors play a bit of a role in this career development, help perhaps in collaboration with career services? Here's Carlene again. Okay, there's limitations. So it does, that equivalency. And I believe there was one above here. Again, I try to take your time here. Yeah, it's worth asking ourselves how informed we are about the career service. Oh, even, yes, okay. So are we speaking, and so we being lecturers or other members of the university community? Is that what you mean there? Ourselves? Oh, I lost your voice.
I'm asking, it's worth asking ourselves, this community that we've gathered here, how informed we actually are about what actually exists at our own institutions. What's
okay. Mm-hmm.
Between ourselves, the work that we do with students, and the career services that are actually out there. In my experience, the career services that exist are quite peripheral.
Yeah.
Don't really see the connect with the faculty, with the teaching that actually happens.
Yes. You know, in the States, you don't have the luxury of a first-year experience course. I understand that. I want to get to how we can make our faculty aware and those who have daily contact with students in classes. But one of the beauties of the first-year experience course, like a college success course for students, is that those who taught the course, one goal of which was to connect students with critical support services like career services, is that it not only helps students understand what was available, many of the lecturers or the instructors of the course Oh, I didn't know we had that available on campus. I wasn't aware of that service. So your point's well taken. Not only should students need to be apprised, we need to be apprised of what source resources are available to our students, if indeed we want to refer them effectively. So your point's well taken. And I do want to come back to your point and use the word peripheral. I want to get this more central. And of all the slides, I got my eye on the clock. If there's a slide that I'm definitely not going to skip, it's the one, how do we move this very important, pivotal service for student success from the periphery and integrate it into more central activities, if possible, the classroom. Okay. Celine, can we go to the next slide? We're continuing this career development process. And next, once students are aware of themselves and the options that are available to them, is the idea of match or fit that we're talking about. I use terms like interest, strengths, needs, and values. Quickly define it's interest is what they like to do, strengths is what they do well, needs and values what they think is important for them to do or is valuable. Those to me are big threes, and we can get that through assessments, formal assessments. I sometimes like to use open-ended questions with that, but the career development services professionals, I'm sure, are doing that. Know yourself, particularly these things, how do they relate to your career, and try to factor that in. As Andre said, unfortunately, many of our students, they don't look at that. They look at the market. They don't look at themselves and the alignment between their interests, strengths, needs, and values. They look at jobs and money, which sometimes leads to poor fit and early attrition. So now not only do they not get to their career goal, they don't even get to completion of a university degree. And that really frustrates me. I want to do something about it. Number 4, I'm going to move quickly and allow you some more opportunity for input. Awareness of career readiness skills. Students then become aware of this. Once they've got a good fit, and this is the ideal, we're set, we got a good alignment. Now, what do they need to get ready? I think the term career readiness is something you guys use in your country as well. What do they need to really successfully place and advance? And I'm going to share what those are, at least in the States, in a slide coming up, so bear with me. So we want them to complete, but we also want them to be competent. We want them to be complete with skills that are ready for career entry. And I would argue many of those skills are academic that we're just not articulating as career development skills. Here's where I see our lecturers tying in with just a little professional development. They can articulate how these academic skills, which I'll talk about in a bit, are really career readiness skills and increase the relevance of their classes and the motivation of their students. And just in the ideal process, number 5, self-monitoring. Once students are aware of what they need to succeed, then we provide opportunities for them to reflect and track those skills as they move through their program. And again, some of those skills are, this could be like in a journal, a reflection journal. Either this could be embedded in their coursework, or if they do see us outside of class, if they'd be willing to do this. So all those, oral and written communication skills, critical thinking, research skills, learning how to learn, even those academic skills, students need to reflect on how they can articulate them in a job interview, on a resume, in a portfolio. They need to reflect on that and with the right question at the right time, so they see the relevance of all this academic stuff. I have writing and material on this. Please let me know if any of this stuff says, oh, I could use more of that. I'll be happy to share with you beyond the Zoom session. And then some of those self-monitoring would not be skills, but traits. Students learn self-discipline, resilience. They learn to collaborate with classmates, teamwork. Let's give students a language of success that they can monitor, reflect, and have on the tip of their tongue when they go for an interview or list their skills on a portfolio or in a resume. And lastly, we need to, in the ideal scheme, students would not only have these skills monitored, then they would market them. They would know how to package and sell them to prospective employers. Portfolios are big now in the States, and they may be big in Africa. Electronic portfolios, where students actually showcase some of their best work, whether it be videos of their presentations, some their best written research reports, and or if they've got work experience, which I wanted to ask you if your students get any internships or hands-on experience, they may be able to upload electronically products of work that they have done in actual career settings beyond the classroom. That would be the ideal career development sequence if we had the resources and the time now to get them career ready. Celine, can I go to the next slide just to show the folks what seem to be the biggest ones? And now we're doing research on how students think, how good they are, and how employers actually think they are. I don't know if you've seen this research. This, I believe, is peculiar to the States. But here are the competencies on the far left that employers, human resource people, and I think even some new professionals report that seem to be critical for their success. And some of them are very predictable and very self-explanatory. Professionalism and work ethic are things like reliability, responsibility, punctuality, time management, integrity, and notice the discrepancy there. Students rate themselves much higher than employers do. Employers rate them much lower, and they need to work on those skills. I'm saying this is stuff we should be getting our students early so they know as they plan their careers. You've heard the expression backward design. You begin with the end in mind. Careers is what is important to them. This is what's important to employers who are going to hire them in careers. Let's front load some of this stuff so students can be more intentional about developing these attributes and competencies from the get-go. Reverse engineering is the term I was looking for. Carlene, thank you for your help. Oral communication, you see a discrepancy there. Critical thinking, which, by the way, is the #1 by far objective of university lecturers. Now, they may not be able to define what critical thinking is. They might edge all over the board, but that's #1, and you see employers are not happy about that. Relative to how students rate themselves. And also important that these competencies, Jacqueline, it is also important to incorporate these competencies with the skills competency needed for, what's for IR? I'm sorry, help me, for IR. I can't hear you, Ancilla.
The fourth industrial revolution.
Oh, the fourth industrial revolution. Boy, I'm learning such great stuff here. Reverse engineering, fourth industrial revolution. Yes. Thanks for your help. We've started this at the University of the Free State, one of my favorite names for a university. This is part of our graduate attributes project at the graduate level or undergraduate. Can I ask Lauren, when you say graduate attributes, is the attributes of a college graduate or a graduate student?
This is at the undergraduate level.
Okay, thank you. So very nice. And you call it the Graduate Attributes Project. Thank you. I like that. I'm going to make a note of that if I can. So if I talk somewhere else, I'll be giving South Africa a lot of good PR here as I go forward. I don't want to fixate on this slide, but the only one, if you see it, digital technology is the only one on the list where students underestimate their capability. Employers are more satisfied with their use of digital technology. It's kind of interesting. It's more the I don't want to say softer skills or the less technical skills that, and here's a kudo or from Carlene to Lauren. Maybe, we sometimes, I don't know if you use the word benchmarks much in your country, where we look at other places doing things that we can benefit from. I think one big advantage of conferences like that is not so much an outside Joe like me coming in, but people talking to each other and finding benchmarks within the context of your own challenge. Andre, I found the transition from university to the world of work a massive shift. We probably, let me finish here. we probably also need a first year at work experience program. Now, you're anticipating, again, slides that we can skip in the future. John Gardner, the founder of the first year experience in America, was a transition to college. I worked with him on that. In the 90s, he wanted to start what we called the senior year experience. And we actually had a book out. It was designed to the transition from university to the world of work, just as Andre was saying. He was hoping that that would become a movement, just as the international first year movement came. Here we go with politics. Once in America, first year that we have general education, we don't have departments controlling things. When we tried to get that going with seniors, and then they were so deeply into their field of study, the lecturers, the instructors had so much control of their programs, they weren't willing to work with what we call senior capstone courses or senior seminars that would not just, wouldn't just do a senior thesis, but actually would incorporate something into a senior course that would facilitate their transition to the world of work, and which would involve also connecting with young adult mentors who've made that transition. Unfortunately, that movement didn't get off the ground. But Andre's point, we talk about the first year experience, there are bookends. I see a lot of connections between the first year and what we call the senior year, or maybe you call it final year experience. If we're going to do reverse engineering, what do we want our college graduates to be able to do and transition upon graduation, and connect that with what we're doing in the front, anchor it, both ends of the bookends. Some through mentoring, some companies offer such options to get entry employees ready and help them step up. So that's another partnership between universities and corporations and employers. Town gown relations or university workplace relations, to get them internships, hands-on experience, facilitate. I'm not sure how that's going in South Africa. We need more work with that in the States. That was one goal of the senior year experience movement. I wish it would have taken off. It hasn't. I must say this, I'm a lecturer or a faculty member. I'm proud of my profession, but sometimes we can get a little uppity and territorial. And when I've tried to convince some of my instructional colleagues that we need to articulate how our academic skill building really is career skill building. And some will, Joe, my job is not to teach them how to do a job. There's a kind of a purity about the academic life that some instructors feel will be contaminated by blending with their career preparation. That's a challenge. We have policy issues, and then there are identity issues. How instructors or lecturers see their role, their need to collaborate with student affairs, and the need to overcome territoriality and political issues. I can't deny that. I was always a naive kid going to the university. I thought, oh, we're going to all join together. The uni, where's the uni in university? Sometimes I wonder. There's a lot of territoriality. The one thing on the list that I wanted to mention, we're not there to prepare them for university, Andre, so that's not peculiar to South Africa. Career management, I just wanted to show you on that list. That's kind of an ill-defined one. But by what employers mean about that is the ability of students to articulate their strengths, what they're good at, what they're interested in doing, be able to articulate that in a job interview and be able to advocate for that in terms of career advancement. So some of the things we were talking about before, equipping students with a language of readiness. What does it need to be successful? A self-awareness of their talents and what's a good fit for what they can do, that their vocational interests align with their personal interests. Even employers say that's important. They look for that in interviews and in hiring. They want good self-awareness. I just thought you'd be interested in that. And I really like the discrepancy research. We really need more of that. And sometimes you heard the term cognitive dissonance, when students say, oh my gosh, I thought I was good at that. I got to work on that. So the discrepancy sometimes can create cognitive dissonance that promotes attitudinal behavioral change. Celine, can we advance a bit? I got my eye on the clock because I don't want to keep you from your family and dinner. Now let's start talking about, well, here's what we've done so far. I tried to make a case, and maybe I overstated, why career services are so important for our overarching goals of student success, both in the States and South Africa. Then I talked about, well, what would be the ideal content of a career development program, the 6 steps. Start with self-awareness, awareness because it ends up with self-marketing, that 6-step process. I guess now we're transitioning from the why to the what to the how. You can have a great career development program, but how does it get to students, if at all? I mean, and so it mentioned the word peripheral, and that's what's happening in the States. We have some very dedicated, competent career counselors available to students, but their message is not getting to students. So the how matters. How do we get the good content of a career development program to our students? There was a chat. Please excuse me, this is how I like to do things. My apology. Allow me to go back to your early comment, Joe. At the instant I am attached to, we introduced MOOCs, yes, particularly for all first-year students, in an attempt to mitigate a high volume of wrong course choices. Yes, so how about use of technology in the advising and career counseling process? Interesting. Can we use some of the advancing technology to help us in achieving some of these goals? And MOOCs might be one of them. Thanks so much. That was from Mike, I believe. Thanks, Mike. Here to me are the two, when I think of a high power program, these are the two terms that come to mind. It's proactive outreach. Support for career development reaches students in their first year while it's early enough to make a difference. And the university initiates the support process by reaching out to students and actively bringing support to them rather than waiting and hoping that students will seek it out on their own. In the States, we used to use the term intrusive for the second. We got to do it early, and we can't just offer our programs passively and hope students will take advantage of them, because research in the States indicates that students underutilize support services, particularly first-generation students who are not familiar with the whole process. So the argument is, and this is ideal now, I'm not sugarcoating this, the ideal thing is we would get some of this to students in their first term. If we're going to insist they get on a career track early, can we give them at least one term to crystallize that, front load some stuff early to them, so by December or by the end of whatever end of their first term, they have gotten this support and it's been aggressively reaching them, perhaps through their classes, rather than hoping that they'll drop by and get it on their own. And I know I got a chat I'm going to check out here in a second. And secondly, a good program or any support program reaches or has the capacity to reach large numbers of students, enabling them to exert a pervasive and systemic impact on student success. We have what in the States what are called boutique programs, a sliver of, they're wonderful programs that are experienced by a sliver of the student population. That's not scalable. It's not systemic. I mean, I'm happy the programs are well designed, but it's frustrating to see them not reach a significant number of the student body. You know, in the ideal world, we should be requiring some of the stuff rather than leaving it optional. And that's what we're doing in the States. So a lot of it's first year experience courses with a required career development component. I know your modules, you don't have the luxury of that right now, but if we want to make things less peripheral, to borrow Ancilla's term, more central, I think we got to start integrating them into the curriculum and make them, what's the word, inescapable, not optional, but inescapable. And so here's where I see our instructors, our lecturers, our curriculum playing a pivotal role. Let's see what the chat question was. Mike, would be great to learn more. Here's, okay, this is what I love. This is just like a good class, people learning from each other. Hopefully we can keep the communication channels go. And that's what makes a good conference. It's not only what you do in these 3 days, but the ripple effect I'm using a lot of colloquialisms, wiggle room, ripple effect. I mean, I promised myself not to do that. The after lingering effects. Okay, let's move down to, and we got more, your input coming up here pretty soon. Celine, can we transition to the next slide? So what are the routes through which we can deliver programs? Now we talked about the ideal, what's available to us? I don't know if you use the word extracurricular or co-curricular. What do you refer to your student affairs, student service, programming, workshops? We tend to use the word co-curricular. We're trying to move to capture the idea that what student affairs folks are important, and there's bona fide learning that goes on outside the classroom that is co-equal in importance. I know it's just a linguistic thing, but I think it matters. I don't think student affairs folks have historically gotten a lot of respect in the United States, and I like the change in terminology. That's great. That's the most common way we do it, but that's still peripheral. The other option is curricular strategies, which I alluded to earlier. Can we infuse, embed, integrate some of these good ideas we've been talking about? Are there faculty, instructor, allies that we can partner with? Okay, Lauren, we've seen students push back. Let me see. I apologize. I really like the input. We've seen students push back at mandatory FYE programs. Students like a first-year seminar, but if you make the value proposition clear, then you can get them to engage. Yes, that's typical of us. Let's remember, and I'm not simplifying, but it connected to the theme of this talk, careers matter, jobs matter to students. If that's so important, and if we can connect the first-year seminar to their careers, that may be one way to enhance the value of that proposition, expectancy motivation theory. We'll start with what's on their minds, what's important to them, and careers are, jobs are. So if that's the case, if we want to sell FYE programming, we have got to capitalize on the motivation that can be provided. Now, in fact, I know lectures, and that's tampering with academic purity. I don't see it that way. It matters to students. It matters to their family. Let's capitalize that and tie it into our first year programs to increase value, expectancy, motivation. Thank you. Very good idea and great input. So I plead to you there. I know I'm an instructor. My best friends are instructors. Sometimes we don't get it, but I would say, what are our allies, particularly in heavily enrolled classes, that we may be able to partner with in some way, as I'm raising here as a question. We can pick and choose, even those who are willing to, if we can't do it across the board. Sometimes this has to be done on a political basis. That's how I got a whole involvement. Student affairs people came to me. Joe, can you help us get a first year experience course in the curriculum? These were kind people. They welcomed me to campus when I was a new faculty member. They came to me as a friend, and that was my first year experience course. We call it the psychology of college adjustment. I had to figure out a way to get it through the curriculum. Partnerships matter, relationships matter. If you have good relationships with your lecturers who may be able to work with you, let's capitalize on those, Carlene, and make it a central point to, okay, good. Pardon for let's see what folks are saying. If I can move up here. Oops, I went too far. I'm sorry, I went too far. And make it, here's Carlene, and make it a central point to leverage their desired outcome relating to students and faculty needs, show them how it benefits both. Yes, well, yes, clearly. And I say this to our faculty who push back about student success courses. Don't you want students in your classes who know what critical thinking is, know how to ask the right questions, are prepared to do the reading and their assignments? Don't you want better students in your classes, better discussions, more motivated students? Well, what we do in first year experience not only is to the student benefit, it simultaneously benefits faculty needs. And you're right, we need to double dip there, show that we can achieve both objectives simultaneously. And then Danielle, I think the overarching narrative is so important in essay and elsewhere. There's a reliance dominance on a deficit model. Yes, as opposed to there's a, what's the term for that? There's a strength model, or that's like strength quests and things are like that, asset model, right? We need to continue to work to change the narrative to one of student success. Things are often made available for you to ensure and support your success, completion, your graduate. I couldn't argue further. One of my, I'm old and compulsive. That's part of the reason why I'm here, because my stuff has been around so long and gets bandied around. I've never felt that first year experience programming was remedial. I've never felt that. It made, it helped students go who would have not survived to survive, but it made those who could already survive, it helped them to thrive. Studies we did on our own campus, the whole curve slipped. There were fewer students on academic probation. We saved the deficit, but more students ended up on the dean's list or ended up in honors because of the strategies they were developing in our first year experience. All students benefit from this. This is a very important point. And career development benefits everyone. And it's a matter of fulfillment, productivity, both in college and beyond. Let's minimize the remedial rap and the deficit map and articulate that these programs benefit even our most prepared students as well. An asset-based narrative. Thank you, Lauren. That's what I was looking for. No, Susanna, and again, please excuse me if I'm mispronouncing. CPUT 101 program is also, what's CPUT 101, may I ask? What is CPUT 101?
No, Susanna, you can perhaps unmute yourself and just explain.
CPUT 101, what is, I know it's helpful.
It's a program that we have developed at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. That's what CPUT stands for. That is taken by first year students as they arrive at the institution.
Oh, wow. And what does CPUT stand for?
Cape Peninsula University of Technology.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice.
Okay.
And it's working well, you say, at all levels. Yeah.
It's working very well, and even senior students, they make use of it.
Very good. You know, there's an assessment. I know you have lots of research going on. I'm very impressed with the rigor of your research. We need to look at both ends of the curve when we start to make a case for our gathered data. Let's show not only how many students are being retained, let's show how our programs are benefiting students, as Nociana points out, at all level, how it's benefiting those on the upper end of the bell-shaped curve as well. The students in the middle, the students on the end who need to survive. Let's parse out and look at the subpopulations. I think that could help us make our case that what we're doing is not just robbing from Peter to give to Paul, or a zero-sum game where we're using resources for this group. We run this in America all the time. You know, we're using resources for this group that should be using. I don't see it as a zero-sum. Most of the first-year program is going to, what's the expression? A rising tide lifts all boats, even those boats that are close to the surface to begin with. Thanks for your input. And then experiential learning. I'm very big on this. I was going to ask you for your input here. In addition to students piling up credits and taking courses and learning and taking vocational interest tests and paper and pencil tests and computer-based tests, so critical for them to get hands-on experience in, I hate to use the word real world, and that's not like the university is not a real world, but in actual business settings or work settings while they're in university. And I would argue this is ideal. Most of that, if it occurs in the States, occurs later in the experience, like an internship or something near the time they graduate to get them some work experience. I would love to see some of this front loaded. If we could get students involved in some applied hands-on work experience during the time where they're most vulnerable to attrition and fail to see sometimes the relevance of their academic work, that would be wonderful. And, you know, that could be service learning, undergraduate research. We'll stop pushing it all the way to the back. Let's use it up front, and not only to get them career ready, but to keep their interest in university. is too much in the States, too much sitting in large lecture classes that are theory-based, and we lose good students who just are not seeing the connection between what they're learning in the classroom and the real world. So we want to keep them engaged to completion, and when they leave, we don't want that scenario in the cartoon. My only skill is taking tests. We don't want that to happen when they leave university. We want them to have actual experiential learning skills in addition to the rigorous academic skills. Let's see what the folks are saying. Our team is saying. Let's go up here, Carlene. For law, okay. For law and nursing at NWU, I guess it's one of your universities, students are exposed to work context. Education has in-service training, but many other courses only get practical experience at, yeah. Now you talk about practicums. I was going to give you a typology of experiential learning. Some of them, I don't know if you use the word internships, we'll get to the next slide. But some of them building practicums. So someone's interested in education, they would have some childhood education experience built in to their courses early. Yes, and it's usually the more applied skill. I wish we could do it more systematically. You see my point here. Let's hook them with application early, not only to prepare them for career placement and hiring, but to increase their motivation to persist to degree completion. Let's see what others are saying.
Just to point out, Joe, we have 15 minutes left.
Yes, got it. There is need for more career development initiatives, especially for students doing non-professional degree programs. Okay. Well, we're aware of the need. That's the first step. And then we need to argue for resources and so forth. But here, today, these are the big critical routes, and they're not independent. Can student affairs collaborate with classroom-based programs? Now, by that I mean, I'm going to get ahead a little bit to save time. There are two ways we can do this. Instructors could create assignments that connect them with career services without even messing with their class time. Just build it into their syllabus or course outline. The other option is to bring career services to class. You've heard of course integrated library instruction, course integrated academic support. I don't know if they're doing that in South Africa. So if you wanted students to learn library skills, you don't just bring them to the library, you give them a meaningful assignment in a class or a module that gets them to use the library to complete work done in the classroom. Supplemental instruction is what we do in the States. We wanted students to use academic support services like peer tutors. Let's embed the peer tutor in the class and have them meet at one meeting as part of their out of class. It's usually optional. Sometimes it's required. We've used that term before in the States, course integrated academic support. I would argue we could talk about course integrated career support. Can we connect our peripheral student services with our classroom-based programs, either through assignments or if the instructor is willing to sacrifice, which is a bigger challenge, some of their beloved class time for career development, even if it's career development related to the field of study being taught by the instructor, and experiential learning as well. Students can find that on their own, or we might be able to integrate that more intentionally in our classes with practicums, field work, undergraduate experience, not only for juniors or seniors, but for first and second year students. I see those big three. I don't see them operating on parallel tracks. It would be great if we could get some intersection and synergy among those three options. Celine, next slide, and I've got my eye on the clock. I know the big ones are coming up. Here's what's going on in the States very quickly. I can go, I don't know if this is happening. These are the most common way career development is being done in the States. Workshops, which are optional. The research shows they're effective, but students don't take advantage of them. And if they do take advantage of them, they take advantage of it too late. They don't start thinking about career development till they get near a career. They're not doing it early enough. Career fairs, this is when we bring a lot of folks to campus, different professionals in kind of a a fair, kind of a happening. They sit in booths, students go around, ask them about their careers to get insights, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So they learn what's actually being covered in those situations. I like to prepare students with questions. I have such questions. If you would like them to borrow them, you're welcome to it. And then the big one to me is, again, it's back to moving from optional to an escape. How do we incentivize students to participate in programs related to career development? I mean, things we're doing in the States are awarding them certificates. I don't know if this is something, I don't know if it's going on in South Africa. It's called a co-curricular transcript or student development transcript. Students who commit, in this case, to a series of career development workshops over time, when they graduate, on their official transcript is not only listed their coursework, but their engagement in co-curricular experiences, whether it's leadership, service, career development. It's a way of sort of providing some extrinsic motivation to students who engage in what we think is so important to them. I would suggest to you, what is so important for our students to do that they're not doing, that we can create some incentives for them to do it. Some of our institutions, if a student wants to interview for a job, sometimes universities bring employers to campus for job interviews. They make it a prerequisite that they have contact with career development services to be able to participate in the interview. It's almost like a course prerequisite. It's a co-curricular prerequisite. If you want to interview for jobs that are being sponsored by the university on campus, your passport for that interview is involvement in career preparation. Let's see what the folks are saying. It's correct that the greatest challenge that most of our curricular in South Africa and worldwide is the lack of better. Yeah, so that's a key partnership. I don't know if we can get help with the powers that be who are connected with the corporate world. There are employers, there are people with money who just don't want to donate money. They really want to do something for students. That's been my experience. Can we connect with them, those who really want to make a difference in our students' lives, and not just donate money or buildings, but who actually might want to donate time as part of this partnership? Thank you for that idea. Carlene, have careers and most students can apply for, it's limited. We need to expand if possible. Himali, creating opportunity through, yes, service is one of the big ones, particularly if they reflect on that. They don't just learn from experience, they learn from reflecting on that experience. That's the difference between volunteerism and service learning. But service learning is a great way to build a resume, network with people in the field, get letters of recommendation. I don't know if that's going on in South Africa, but let's build that in and build it in early and build it in as a win-win. You're serving your community. There's the altruism, but there's also an egocentric payoff. You're also benefiting yourself. And if we can do that and do it early, yes, clearly another way to get experiential learning, particularly with reflection. Andre, I love the idea of linking jobs on a campus to participate in career development. We have work-study programs. You're all anticipating my future slides, so if I don't get to all of them, please don't feel that you've been gypped. You really anticipated everything. Yeah, we have work-study programs that are explicitly funded for low-income students. And I've been trying to work with some folks on making sure those placements are intentional. If someone wants to work in human resources, we have a first-generation low-income, maybe we can place them with a job 20 hours on campus, work around the college schedule so it doesn't affect their classwork, 20 hours, connect them to maybe a position on campus that relates either directly or indirectly to their career pursuits. Great way to do that. And in terms of retention, the more time we keep students on campus, the more likely they are to stay. So if these students need income, a lot of your students are low, and if we can get that income earned on campus rather than having to leave campus to earn it, they're more likely to persist to degree completion. Thank you, Andre. I got my eye on the clock about 5 minutes. Celine, I think we can move to the next one. The next slide. Thanks. And then we have curricular strategies. We have career development courses that are taught by career development professionals for credit. Some universities have been flexible that way. I don't believe that option's available at South Africa, at least not yet. The courses tend to be under-enrolled, are optional, and they're taken late. Again, the more motivated students take them instead of the students who may need them the most. That's unfortunately how it works when you leave things to being optional. The big way we're doing it in the States, and you don't have this option yet, but I would still encourage you to fight for it, a first-year experience course or first-year seminar where career development is an integral component. That's the #1 way we're making it scalable in the States. Heavily enrolled first-year experience seminar or a required one. So they leave that course with a career plan. They leave with a success plan that carries beyond first. That would be my dream, that every South African first-year student or first-term student would leave a course with a map of success that connects their academic coursework and their career. That map would include not only courses, but experiential learning opportunities, service learning, internships, jobs. However, that package, what would be the ideal plan for success? The next best thing to having them do it is to have a firm plan for doing it, if we could do that. Now, here's how I see, and these are the two of the most important ones that I wanted to talk to you about, and even if we don't get to the rest of the slides, we don't have first-year seminars. It's the third dot, the third bullet there. Can we infuse or embed career development services into courses that are heavily enrolled in students within the standard curriculum? Now, not creating a first-year seminar, because I know there are challenges and pushback by apparently students and instructors, but let's capitalize on what's already there. Can we use these existing courses as an anchor to integrate career services? Your thoughts on that one? We talked our senior capstone already in response to an Andre question. Bullet number 3, this is, I see, as the big viable option from a distance. Tell me about this. Are there lecturers who would be willing? Is there a partnership possibility between the curriculum, the coursework, and student affairs, career development services, and bringing some of this to them in their academic settings? Lauren, thank you. Happy we are on track. The theme of the second semester of our so we got some mandatory first-year stuff going on in Focus has been career development. We've been running that for 3 years, and it's well received. We have more than 8,000 students enrolled. Well, that could be one of those benchmarks. We can end them. Obviously, Carlene is impressed and comes up with a one-syllable exclamation to express that excitement. Yes, well, the more, I'm a big fan of giving students choice, but like a good parent, sometimes you know what's best for your students. And if career development is so important, mandatory is a strong word, I know, but and so is compulsory, but we mandate they do math, we mandate they take courses. Why are we so bashful about mandating things that we know is so critical for their success? We have 3 minutes left, yes. We've hit on virtually everything. I'm looking ahead on my notes. Tell me about undergraduate research opportunities. Is that a form of experiential learning that's available to I see a note from Carlene, essential career strategies. Yeah, we want to make the terminology less threatening, mandatory, compulsive, like a mandatory sentence, it's threatening. Let's watch our language. Language does make a difference, not only to students and the faculty as well. All our language needs to be less deficit-based, as was discussed before. Let's not say study skills, for example. Let's talk about deep learning strategies. Let's not talk about time management. Let's talk about priority management. Let's label our topics in ways that emphasize the positivity of it, not the remedial aspect of it. Let's see. I was just checking to see where we are. No, I think we've covered everything. I will advance the slides just to show you that you anticipated everything I was planning to do. Celine, can we go to, thanks for your positive feedback. Celine, I just wanted to show them quickly the slides that were left, and I had a parting messages. That's what we talked about, senior capstone. We talked about all of these. Mentoring is big. I don't know if that's, sometimes we do deliberate matching, as I said before, between young adult mentors, peer mentors, particularly if they're close in time, so they can identify. Can we do that intentionally, maybe even by students of color, first generation status? Shadowing is just that you may have heard, they just spend a day actually observing. Internships are more for credit. Co-op programs, all this is self-explanatory. It just lasts longer. These are all workplace setting. Thank you, Lauren. All that will be available to you on the slides. Celine, could you advance? We're right at the end, I promise. If we could advance to the next slide, if you can. I guess maybe we're stuck. It was just a goodbye and thank you for all your participation. And it was my email address again. If I can, I'd be happy to provide any further information. And enjoy your evening with your families. And thanks so much for your engagement.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank you, Joe.
Oh, you're welcome.
You've given us a lot to think about. And yeah, you have definitely earned your breakfast and a good, strong cup of coffee. I think what is, you've started a conversation amongst us. And I think what today's conversation has done is just illustrated the complexity of the issues. The reality is that we are a vocational society. We have to be career focused, but at the same time, we do want to graduate whole students. We want to get students to the graduation stage, but we want them to enjoy that journey to the stage.
Yes.
We want them hating it, as we're often told, and suffering every minute at university. I think you have conveyed the complexity of the issues to us, and I think these are all conversations that we need to advance, and hopefully we can advance them with you at a later stage. So
we're happy to help in any way, formally or informally. Thank you.
I know you are a very generous person at sharing, and we would like to send you a token of our appreciation, which you will find in the mail very soon. And with that, we'll say thank you, the end of day 1, and looking forward to day 2.
Bye. The rest of the conference, I'll be at some of your sessions.
Great.
Best of luck, everyone.
I think
Nice
we can all
meeting you.
unmute and just say goodbye to each other.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for your help.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Bye, guys. Bye.
The University of Johannesburg. The future reimagined.